3 tips for better pricing. Hello, my name is Robin Cuypers and I own a company called Strever. With Strever, I design pricing strategies for small and medium-sized companies in all different kinds of industries. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 tips for better pricing. Tip number 1, know your costs. Your costs are very important, very crucial when it comes to your pricing strategy, because your cost of your product, of your service, of your company will tell you exactly what you should charge at a minimum. You know what your base price should be, and then it's of course a little research you can conduct to evaluate if you can charge a higher price above those costs. Ik kan misschien toch wel nog eens opnieuw beginnen. Maar...
Ja, dat is oké. Ik ga dat gewoon laten lopen. Dat zal het gemakkelijk zijn.
Mag ik gewoon helemaal opnieuw beginnen?
Ja, tuurlijk. Dat is het gemakkelijkste voor mij.
Ja,
Anders moet ik dat Nico vragen om te monteren.
Oké, dat is goed.
Doe maar gewoon wanneer je wilt.
Ja. 3 tips for better pricing. Hello, my name is Robin Cuypers and I own a company called Strever. With Strever, I design pricing strategies for small and medium-sized companies in all different kinds of industries. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 tips for better pricing. Tip number 1 is know your costs. Your costs are extremely crucial when it comes to your pricing strategy, because your cost of your product or of your service of your company will tell you exactly what you should charge at a minimum. So that will always be your base price to start off with. So when your costs are known, you can divide them in 2 different kinds of categories. Like there are costs that are the direct costs and where there are costs that are indirect costs. The indirect costs are the costs they also call overhead costs, the costs of your whole company. For example, your accountant, your insurance, your internet domain or hosting of your website. Those costs have no clear link between the cost itself and your product or service you are calculating your price for. So the cost is to maintain your company, but it's more like an overhead cost. So it's important to also take these costs in consideration, but there's no direct or no clear link between the cost and your end product. But there are also direct costs, and the direct costs, there is a clear link between the costs that are made in your company and the end product or the end service. Costs that are more like direct costs are costs of materials, packaging, delivery costs, etc. So when we take the direct costs, it's kind of very simple because the link between the cost and your product or service is so clear, then you can just take the cost and put it 100% at that product or that service or that project you are working on. So the link between the costs and the end product is very clear, so you can just take it all over there. But with the indirect costs, it's more like a challenge, because the indirect costs, they're to maintain the whole company. So what you have to do there is you have to come up with some kind of allocation key, a key that is divided in percentages to take the cost and divide it with your different products or services. This allocation key can be come up with because you have an idea of the time spent on each product, or the revenue that is created of each product, or the total of units sold of each product. Whatever logic you can find, it is good enough to come up with an allocation key to divide the indirect costs to your product A, your product B, or your product C. When you add the direct costs and the indirect costs all together, you come up with the total cost of your product or your service. So keep in mind this is just the base price. This is not the price you will charge for your product or service to the customer, but it's the price you need at a minimum. This is your break-even price. You can put it that way. So, okay. Tip number 2, gather your research. Gather reference points with pricing research. And what do we mean by that? Your pricing research can be a lot of things. Your costs are really important to start off with, but you can also do research about your time spent on the product or the service, your market you are operating in, the competitors, your customer, your ideal customer. Those things can be other reference points you can take in account when you calculate your price, the price you can charge to the customer. And when you do this investigation properly, you will come up with a willingness to pay. And the willingness to pay is a visualization of what is your cost of the product, but also what is the perceived value of the product in the eyes of the customer. If you have investigated the competitors, maybe you come up with some prices that the competitors are charging for a similar product or service that you have. And if you conduct a research with your ideal customers, you will come up with the willingness to pay. The willingness to pay is some kind of price range with the minimum amount and the maximum amount that your ideal customers are willing to pay for your products or service. So the ideal price point of your products or service is somewhere between that minimum and that maximum, that range of the willingness to pay of your customer. So if you have your cost of your product, also keep in mind that other reference points are needed to come up with the ideal price. Reference points like your market, like your competitors, like your own value, like your customers are really important to take in account. So tip number 3 is communicate your value. And your value is really important when it comes to pricing, because when your customer is buying something from you, they are buying a product or a service, but actually they are buying a better version of themselves or a better version of their life. So your value should be very extremely clear when you are presenting your product. So we can visualize that like a straight line of your value. And for you as the entrepreneur, your value is really clear. You understand all the benefits, all the feelings, all the results you can deliver for your customer. But we have to consider that for your ideal customer, the value isn't as clear as it is for you. They understand partially some of the benefits, some of the feelings, some of the results you can deliver, but they don't understand it nearly as much as you do. So it is really important that you communicate your value really clear. So take the time to communicate on your website, to communicate in a one-on-one conversation, to communicate in direct messages or in an email. What are your benefits, your feelings, your results you can deliver with the product? Because that way the customer will understand your value better and he moves down that straight line of the value. So that way he or she will also accept a higher price from you. So that's why communicating your value is really, really important. And when we want to make your value more concrete, more in detail, we have to consider there are different aspects to value. And one of those things is rational value. Rational value means that you can get the customer more time, more money, or more energy, or you can save them more time, money, or energy. So your product or your service is like a time something that gets them more time or gives them more money available or more energy to spend on other things, for example. But on the other hand, there's also irrational value, and irrational value is really hard to measure, but it's extremely important because it's all about emotions that your customers are feeling. Emotions like exclusivity. So does your customer wants to be part of a group, part of a community, or does your customer want to be exclusive, want something exclusive that is unique for their situation, for example? On the other hand, you can go in detail about carelessness. So if you are a service provider, you can focus on the things that are your customer doesn't need to worry about. You are giving them their mentally more rest. They don't have to care about the service, about the tasks that need to be done, because you are going to do that for them. Carelessness. Another example is certainty. Does your client want certainty or safety? They want to be certain that it's done well. They can get you and you can do it for them, for example. So that are examples of irrational value, but irrational value, you can keep in mind, it's all kinds of emotions that are available in the mind of your customer. And the last thing is quality. And quality is like really important, but also really subjective. So it's not really measurable, but it is something that your client is really considering. And what do we mean by quality? It has to do with your knowledge and your skills. So what have you done in the past? Do you have some kind of diploma? Do you have some kind of certificates? Did you follow some courses? And that's why you have some knowledge and skills available that other people might not have. Another example is, are your customers happy? Are they satisfied with the results you have given them in the past? But also, are they leaving reviews? Are they leaving reviews on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Google reviews? So you can use them on your website, for example. And last thing is word of mouth. In what measure is your word of mouth taking place? Like when I ask you, do you know someone who can design a website for me? And you answer with, you should go to that guy. Then I believe you that the quality of that person is high enough, has a high standard, because it was good enough for you, it might be good enough for me. So that's also an indicator of quality. So when you want to communicate your value, take the benefits, take the feelings, take the results you can deliver, but also take a look at the rational value you can deliver, the irrational value, and the moments of quality you can use as evidence that you are knowing what you're doing. So these are my 3 tips for better pricing. I hope you get a lot of baggage for them so you can take your pricing strategy to the next level. I wish the best of luck for you.